Welcome, everybody, to the Wizard of Radical Self-Respect. My name is Jared Mello. Today, we're going to be talking about how a lot of narcissistic guys will turn their romantic partners into their mother. Now, there are a few different causes of this, but a couple main ones. And we will address in a future video, because I know people get upset when I gender things, the narcissistic dude and his princess daughter. That's another dynamic that I see a lot. But before I get into all of that, please do remember to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell so you'll be notified when I come up with more videos. I normally make videos here about narcissism, radical self-respect, and I have an interview series where I'm trying to do at least one interview a week. And I also have a community on Telegram for people who support me. And if they want support and talk to other community members, they can go join my group on Telegram. The link to do so is in the description, and it's free to do so as well. So it's a free place to get support from myself and others. Now, in today's video, narcissistic dudes will turn their romantic partners into their mother. I didn't realize it, but this became a pretty popular video when I made it on TikTok and other platforms. So we're going to dive into why that is. And it starts with the narcissistic person's relationship with his mother. Often that mother was enmeshed with their son. The boundaries were blurred, autonomy and individuality was not encouraged. So they kind of fused in a way a lot of times. And when I speak about this, there's not just one way this happens. This is what I see most often, where it's the woman that's enmeshed with her son and they get too close for comfort. And the guy, and sometimes the woman, can be at some points neglectful. Maybe she'll be selfish and neglectful, and then she'll feel bad and guilty. So then when she's around her son, she'll spoil him, and then she'll use him as a confidant and treat him more like an adult, older than he really is. That is all part of enmeshment. Now, the rarest combination that I see is the woman that completely abandons her children, though it does happen. I have seen that, but it's not the most common thing that I see. That can cause resentment as well. But like the domineering mother, that's one example. And she can be really close with her golden child son in particular. And these sons can grow up to be any number of kinds of people. Sometimes they turn up to be the narcissistic person, or it can be a guy that has to run every decision by his mother in adulthood and doesn't have his own life. But there's many combinations here. And as always, it always depends on the individual circumstance. Often these guys will grow up to resent their mothers a little bit too. So even though they were spoiled and doted on, they might feel smothered a little bit, and that can develop into a resentment. But again, this all depends. And I've heard some stories where it was almost romantically intimate, almost, in some of these cases. Didn't turn that way, but like the energy was that way. So it was definitely weird in that regard. So this is the seeds of it though. And this is the seeds of NPD too, a lot of times. But the mother is enmeshed with her son and they're too close for comfort. And she doesn't understand that she has to let him do his own thing. You have to let your kids be autonomous and become their own person. But the narcissistic mother, in this case, they're not really a fan of doing that. They don't see it that way. And so what happens is they get too close. They treat the kid like it's an adult, and it puts too much burden on the child before he's ready for it. And so it can cause a lot of different problems. Like in my family, I've seen this too, where there was a mother. She would spoil her son crazily. But then on the other side, she would also like go out and do a lot of drinking, and she would do a lot of partying. And so it was kind of a mixed dynamic when she was around, enmeshed, spoiled, the golden child son. But then also there was a little bit of neglect going on in there too, where she was going out and about, and it would make her kids upset. So there's a lot of different moving parts to this. So then when the son grows up, he's in the love bombing phase, and say he's a narcissistic guy. He has to pretend to be a man. He has to pretend to be the person who has it all together. But deep down, he is still the emotional 5-year-old, and it can be exhausting keeping up that mask. So this is one of the reasons the mask will eventually slip, and the guy will try to convert this woman into being his mother. And I've heard women describe this role as like a mix between an indentured servitude and personal assistant. I have seen that a lot. But basically, some women will take on the role, other women will be more repulsed by the role. And I understand both. The women who take on the role, often it is serving some sort of need in them, or they're trying to fit the idea of what they believe a wife to be or a girlfriend to be. And it turns out they're turning into the guy's mother. So the woman in this case, she'll do this, and it might not be her favorite thing to do, but she slowly but surely gets into this scenario where all of a sudden she finds herself like mothering this adult man. This adult man kid, basically, is what it is. And the mother in this case, like the guy often will be into drugs or alcohol, and the woman will be trying to catch him, and the guy will be sneaking around with the drugs and alcohol stuff. And it's similar to our dynamic of a mother and a son, where the son's trying to go out and do drugs, be a hooligan, and the mother's trying to catch him. Well, this relationship, this happens again in adulthood a lot. I see this dynamic where the mother's like the adult, the woman's the adult, and the guy's like a kid trying to get away with his drug use or alcohol use. And it's really a mother-son dynamic, except they're both technically adults. But of course, the man, more of an emotional 5-year-old in this case. The woman, it's serving a role for her too. It's serving a need for her too to do this. Probably makes her feel important, makes her feel needed. And those are all things that makes her feel valuable and probably makes her feel like she is doing her duty and being loved. But little does she know, it's not going to do much good. Like the guy, any person this goes for, no one can change someone else. Everyone has to be willing to change on their own. No one can make someone change. No one can give someone the desire to change. So this dynamic can be very problematic. Now, the women who are repulsed by this, they get out of there. They say, you know what? I don't want to be with a man-child. I don't want to be this guy's mother, so I'm going to get the heck out of here. And the guy will be resentful in that case too, that the woman's not turning into his mother. But say the woman does turn into his mother, the guy can be resentful of that too. He can be resentful of that too. So basically, there is no winning in the situation. But often the mother, the adult woman in this case, she will schedule all of his appointments, take him to the doctors, the dentist, do all the things the narcissistic guy can't really do on his own, because often he can seem pretty helpless outside of a couple main areas of quote unquote expertise that he has, where maybe he'll be okay at work in some cases, but the rest of his life could be a mess. And that's where the woman comes in and really tries to take care of matters. And the narcissistic guy will let this happen. He wants this woman to take care of everything, so his responsibilities become as little as possible. And that way he can let his hair down, so to speak, and just be the emotional 5-year-old that he is. And some women, it can take them years to really see through this dynamic. But I see it clear as day a lot of times, and it looks like, from the outside, it looks like two adults. But if you actually get inside of it a little bit, it's like, nah, this woman here, she's like the mom, and she's taking care of everything. She's running the ship and trying to catch this guy in drug use, alcohol use. And that's the other thing about it. A person who is really going to be good, they're not going to be wanting to do that too much to their male partners, right? Because what kind of relationship is that if you have to keep on policing them about their drug and alcohol use? Not really too good. So there's issues going on both sides of the dynamic if you go down the timeline long enough. But again, this starts with the enmeshment, which I made a video years ago about mothers don't overprotect and coddle your sons. That doesn't mean don't protect them at all. It doesn't mean don't care for them at all. It just means don't go too far. It just means you got to let them make their own mistakes sometimes a little bit. You got to let them become their own person. Support them through that, but also let them make some mistakes. Let them blunder a little bit. But I think in this day and age, what you see more so is the overprotective versions of mothers and the people that The mothers that feel like they have to do everything for the kid. And the problems this creates in the sons and daughters both, mind you, it's not good. Like there are all these things that are going to happen later in life if their upbringing was not that great. And I've always said that narcissism combination, genetic and upbringing, so I won't blame just one or just the other. I believe it's a combination. Now, trauma plays a part, but I also think genetics plays a part too. And it's one of those things where they're never going to be able to tell and be sure, yep, this is exactly what it's from. This is exactly from this. This is exactly from that. No, there is no way to find that out. It's just, I believe it's a combination of both. So in these situations, though, the mother, you got to let the kid make his own mistakes, because this adult, and I say adult in quotations, when the guy turns into an adult, a lot of times he'll either have to run every decision by his mother, or he'll turn the woman into his mother. And it just turns into a fiasco is what happens. And no one's happy in this scenario either. The man, like, he might not have any responsibilities, but he'll become resentful towards the woman that's acting like the mother. The mother, she'll get resentful too, that she has to do everything and take care of a man-child and do all of the chores and take care of all the responsibilities, besides maybe bringing in a check sometimes. So it's a recipe for unhappiness for everybody. But the key is to recognize it when it's happening. And to see it is, if you start seeing the guy act like he's helpless and that he can't do anything and he can't be responsible, that's something to take note of. And if you're in this situation now as the mother, quote unquote, to your boyfriend or husband, what is this role doing for you? Because chances are it's probably doing something for you if it didn't repulse you in the beginning. So it's doing something. You got to find out what it is. And I'm not blaming anyone for being in the situation. A lot of it's a trauma bond. Well, Faith says men need to heal the control issues caused by mommy. Yes, because the overprotective and controlling mother does create some of that mother wound there. But there's many versions of the mother wound, right? There's the mother wound of the mother abandoned the child. That doesn't happen as much, but it does happen. And then the wound of the mother being controlling and smothering and not letting the guy become his own person. That's a different wound. And they do say a lot of narcissistic guys hate their mothers. And the same goes for guys that turn into like big womanizers. They say they can hate their mothers too. That's a Freud concept. And there could be a little truth in that, where the mother didn't let them become their own person and they got smothered and they maybe had their own narcissistic traits, the mother, and it causes resentment. Like anyone who's going to control someone else, that's not something people are going to like. So it does cause resentment. And that's why everyone has to do their own healing in this case. And I think relationships can help people heal, but most of the healing, like, you do got to get to a place on your own in some cases. And that doesn't mean you don't have friends. It doesn't mean you don't have a community and a support system. But in particular with romantic relationships, I think there are some things that you got to just take care of on your own. So Faith also says, yes, but 99% of men cannot deal with, I don't know what this next part is here. Yes, but 99% of men cannot deal with a woman remotely be, I don't know what that second part is, be themselves. But yes, the men see control when there isn't any. Well, yeah, that would be part of a trauma response, right? A CPTSD, where you see things that are not there. That's where that meme comes from about when you don't heal from what cut you, you bleed on those who didn't. That's what that's all about. So when you've healed through things, how do you know you've healed? You've healed when, or I don't like to use the word healed. I like to use the word processed. You've processed things when you can look back at something and not get a severe emotional reaction. You've processed something when you don't start seeing things that are not there. So like, say maybe you've been cheated on, and you've processed that completely when you have a realistic perspective in your current relationship. Okay, this person here, they are not displaying any of the red flags that cheating partner did. But if you haven't processed it yet, you might start seeing red flags where they don't exist, because you're like skittish about it and you're on edge, which is understandable, but that's where the processing needs to take place. Processed. Yeah. I like to use the word processed because healed to me has the connotation of like you're done, you're complete. And I don't think it's ever complete. I think that there's always ways that we can improve. There's always things that we can do better. And I like with those events, processed is the word I like to use. So, and the processing is when you can look back at it, think about it, and it doesn't really give you a terrible jolt anymore. And you're not seeing things that are not there in your current relationship. So the guy in this scenario, the narcissistic guy, and you're the woman, you find yourself being this guy's mother, there really isn't much you can do because you can't make that guy change. And you mothering him actually doesn't help him. It just helps him stay stuck, unfortunately. So the guy, if he's willing, he would have to do something about all of his issues. He would have to go get help somewhere, find a support system, admit he has a problem, and then become willing to change. And as we mostly know, that is pretty rare. And if you're the mother in this situation, what do? Well, you got to learn when you're caretaking versus caregiving. When are you doing too much for someone else? And I would say in that case, I always say you can't help anyone else that doesn't want to help themselves. That's number one. And if helping someone else is going to hurt you, that's a problem too. So you got to really know where the lines are with that. And also understand you can't pour from an empty cup. So you can best help others when you help yourself first. So there's a lot of things come into play here. But questions to ask yourself is, what do I get from being the mother in this situation? What do I get when I'm constantly helping? Because I have no problems with people helping. People just got to be careful with helping to their own detriment. That's a big difference where they'll help and they'll help and they'll help, but then they'll wind up hurting themselves, which could be a path to resentment. I see this happen a lot. That's where memes like the being good doesn't get you loved, being good gets you used meme comes from. It's from people like that give and give and give and give, and they think that means they're being good, and that's doing good, but then they'll get resentful when it's not returned, and then they'll get resentful when it's not being appreciated. So that's what they'll say, oh, it gets you used. It's like, well, in those cases, you kind of allowed yourself to be used a little bit. So that's why it's important to have strong boundaries. If someone's not going to appreciate anything that you do for them, why continue? So it's a good question to ask, honestly. And you ask yourself, what is doing all this giving doing for me? Is this something I could be doing on my own? Something I could be giving to myself? The questions we ask ourselves can go a far way. Yes, women can't mother. I want a man to lead. It's man's role to lead. So nice to hear a man talk about processing healing. No, it's true, though. Like the best leaders are guys that have processed and done the work on themselves. They're not going to be in the childish mode of leading. And can you tell the childish mode? The childish mode is a guy that can't hear any disagreements, a guy that can't hear any pushback, a guy that flips the script all the time or plays the victim or gaslights and moves the goalposts, can't take accountability, can't accept when they're wrong or admit when they're wrong. Those are all the indicators of a guy that hasn't done the work. And again, the same with women too. A woman who hasn't done the work, she'll be doing all of those same things. But this dynamic, keep your eyes open for. If you find yourself being the guy's mother, take a step back and say, how did this happen? How did I get converted into being this guy's mother? Because we know why the guy did it. The guy often did it because deep down, he's the emotional 5-year-old, and it's work for him to have that love-bombing mask that acts like he's the man. So he eventually wants to relax and then let the woman take care of everything. And he'll convert them into his mother. And even with romantic intimacy in these cases, that can go away a lot of times too. The narcissistic guy will no longer be into the woman, partially because of this mother dynamic, mind you. But he'll also probably devalue at this time too, and then probably try to seek romantic partners elsewhere because the elsewhere partners are not his mother. But this woman, he has turned into his mother, and the sexual interest may be lower in that case, besides the other reasons for the devalue, etc. So awareness is key in these kinds of issues. And I feel for the women that have got themselves involved in this kind of situation, but the solutions are to take a look at how it happened, to heal your own side of the street, process your own side of the street, recognize the red flags so that when they come up, you can either get to the bottom of them or do something about it and leave. And admittedly, the hardest ones to do something about this with will be the covert varieties, because the covert varieties, their traits can kind of hide under the radar for longer. It can take years sometimes for people to recognize it. So those will be trickier. I can't deny that. The grandiose, overt narcissistic types, they are easier to see. They're kind of like a neon flashing light because you see them coming from a mile away. The coverts, trickier for sure, but the dynamic can definitely still occur in that situation too. And I would say this mother dynamic, especially with the coverts, it can subtly and sneakily sneak up on people so that before the woman knows it, she's taking care and doing more than her responsibility should be. She's taken on more to her plate than she should be. And she's scheduling everything, doing everything, cooking, cleaning, making sure all the bills get paid. And the guy, he's kind of slumped back metaphorically or literally, and maybe excess drinking, drug use, and trying to like sneak around to get away with what he wants to get away with. And the woman will be trying to police it and stop it and control it. But it's a never-ending battle in that case, unless the guy wants to do something. Narc man wants you to chase also. Thank God I saw the signs and cut it. Girls, don't chase men. Heal the femininity and masculinity. All boils down to setting boundaries. Correct. Setting boundaries is good. I think there's a difference between like chasing and showing interest. But you can show a little interest. But I would say chasing happens when like a guy's not getting back to you or ignoring you, and you continue texting and continue texting. Like that would be more like a disrespecting yourself scenario. And the guy would be doing the same thing. A guy that chasing a woman would be if she's ignoring you, not talking to you, and you keep on trying. And this is where you see the memes of a woman posting on Facebook. Everyone has a guy who's talking to himself and is in their inbox, 47 unanswered messages. It's like that. That's chasing. That's chasing, and that's disrespecting yourself. So don't disrespect yourself. So I think that's it for today's video on the narcissistic guys turning their romantic partners into the mother. It's a pretty common scenario, at least according to the comments on my TikToks and other reels. So if this is you out there, don't lose heart. You have awareness of it now, and just look for the red flags of it in the future. Look for the red flags of narcissism in general. And we all know what the red flags of narcissism are. But the big thing is, don't let the good feelings make you ignore the red flags. That's for one. And then don't sweep them under the rug either. Watch out for when you rationalize someone else's behavior or justify someone else's behavior, or wish someone would be more like how they used to be, or wish they would be someone different, or if they would only change. All of those kinds of things are a problem, and there are things to watch out for. So when you see the red flags, you got to act on them, because it's not enough just to see them. You got to do something about it. If you don't do anything about it, eventually you'll get to a place where those red flags will be the reason why the relationship ends later. Yep, you got a faith. I appreciate all the questions here. It helps kind of move the video along, and it gives me some talking points as I go. So I appreciate that. So if you got this far, please remember to like the video, maybe share this video with others that you think might benefit, and thank you very much for watching.